We had the best time doing the initial breakdown of the body language and behavior in this video, and we decided we'd revisit some of our favorite moments from it.
You guys good?
Yeah.
Cool. Well, it's been an interesting 2.5 weeks.
Has it only been that long?
Yeah,
Has it been like
feels a little longer, I would say.
Gosh, yeah, it went fast.
It went fast.
Mhm.
Guilty. Did you expect that?
No.
Not at all.
I mean, obviously I knew that's a possibility. Yeah. So it was a bit of a surprise, actually.
What made you surprised that it went that direction?
I mean, I shouldn't be surprised knowing what I know about the judicial system and how it works. So it still was. Just you were there, so
It was.
from what happened, I was surprised at that outcome.
And we didn't really see any noticeable reaction from you or really anybody else in the courtroom when that verdict was read. When you did hear it, what was your first thought?
So it's not a secret that I had a near-death experience, right? I talked about it at my sentencing. And when you have that experience and you go to the other side of the veil, you understand, you have a life review. You see your whole life, everything that happened to you. And you see what's important and what's unimportant. And you see what matters in life. So what matters in life is how you react to things, how you treat other people, and the love that you give while you're here on earth. And that's it.
So you felt not
That's it.
reacting was the best call in that moment?
No, I felt like I should have joy in every situation, which is what I was taught to do in heaven. So.
All right, Chase, what do you got?
Everything about this setup is manufactured authenticity. We had these raw camera shots. These kind of the mics are visible in the shot now. Mark has a whole video on this of like people wanting their mics to be in the view of the podcast. And it's all there. There's casual small talk and they leave the small talk in there like, oh, are we ready? Are we ready to film? Is everything working?
You guys good?
Yeah.
Cool.
So it's engineered, I think, to make Lori look more real, approachable, maybe even harmless. Who knows? But right here, she's relaxed. She's smiling. She's fully composed. Her hair is curled and makeup's done. But she doesn't show hardly any nonverbal leakage. There's no signs of fear, shame, discomfort here. And I think this is critical. And when truly guilty people are facing a conviction or have just faced a conviction for something horrifying like this, some level of emotional strain typically leaks through. And whether they want it to or not. But right here, Lori's at home. Her comfort to me isn't just surprising. It's diagnostic. And her words kind of sealed the deal. So instead of acknowledging the gravity of her conviction, she reframes it in some kind of spiritual lens and doesn't talk about right and wrong. She talks about having joy in every situation.
I felt like I should have joy in every situation, which is what I was taught to do in heaven.
So she sidesteps this moral responsibility and kind of floats into this religious abstraction, I'll call it. And this is what we call in psychology, this is called cognitive reframing. So it's using a belief system to delete accountability. So she's not responding to the facts of her case at all. She's responding to a personal story that she's kind of written in her head. So she's not fighting against reality like we typically see in guilty people. She has replaced reality. She's not up against it. And she's emotionally comfortable because this version of the story where this spiritual stuff is the supreme thing. It's more real than the one where her children are dead because of her actions. And I don't think she's calm. Even though she looks it, I think she is detached from reality. And those are different things. And I think that detachment is one of the clearest windows into the pathological thinking that we're about to unpack here in these next few videos. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, you're right. It's interestingly manufactured because everybody looks like they've just walked out of the salon, there's nothing wrong with that. Everybody looks fantastic. But given that later on we're going to get this idea of, how badly women are being treated in these jails, it's like, well, it looks quite opulent from how everybody's looking there. It's been an interesting 2.5 weeks.
It's been an interesting 2.5 weeks.
And Vallow minimizes.
Has it only been that long?
So she's already cutting down the offer that the interviewer is making.
Yeah, it went fast.
It went fast.
Well, those two things are mismatched already. Has it only been that long? It went fast. Has it only been that long? It went fast. That doesn't make sense to me. Mismatch of evaluation there, but Whitney joins in with the mismatch. So some good mirroring there from the interviewer when I think Vallow is already trying to cut her down, to minimize on her.
It was a bit of a surprise, actually.
What made you surprised that it went that direction?
And Whitney shows contempt. The side of the mouth goes up. So I would say she's poking at Vallow's sense of control. She lost control of this case, and there's contempt from the interviewer that she lost contempt for her, I think. And then Vallow comes in and plays this near-death experience, I'm enlightened card.
It's not a secret that I had a near-death experience, right? I talked about it at my sentencing.
It's a tough one to beat. If you're in a conversation with somebody and there's a bit of argy-bargy going on, there's a bit of play going on, and somebody goes, well, of course, I died and came back from the dead. So, there's that. It's a tough one unless you've died and come back from the dead more times, and that will come up. That will come up. But unless you've, gone to heaven and back again several times, you can't really go, well, no, I've got, I have more experience of that than you, and therefore, you should really engage with me as a peer. Vallow already is saying, I will not engage with you, 5 Emmy Awards, 2 Associated Press Awards, and others. I will not engage with you as a serious person right now.
The mainstream media is not broken at all. It is functioning exactly as it was designed. It exists to manipulate you, to divide you, to feed you fear and outrage and distraction while pretending all of that is information. And most people are still swallowing it like it's gospel. I've spent years studying propaganda and psychological operations and human behavior, and I will tell you this plainly. The media is not here to tell you the truth. It's here to shape your truth without you even realizing it. Every network, every outlet, left or right or center, they are all playing the exact same game. Keep you emotionally hijacked, cognitively blind, and addicted to narratives engineered by people who have zero interest in informing you at all. So they manufacture a bunch of division, they amplify lies, and they bury stories that threaten their control. This is not journalism. This is mass psychological warfare. This is why we use ground news. It is not just a news app. It is a tactical weapon for seeing through all this fog. Ground news pulls in all these stories from every source, whether it's liberal or conservative or state-run, corporate-owned, billionaire-owned, and they show you these biases and the ownership of who owns the outlet that wrote that article, the spin. And then finally, my favorite is what is being left out of that article. I always talk about let's look for what's missing. They do that at Ground News. So you're going to watch these narratives fracture in real time. You're going to be able to spot manipulation like it is lit up in neon. And once you see how disgustingly coordinated all this stuff is, you're not going to be able to unsee it. The behavior panel never really partners with very many brands, but Ground News is way different. It puts the power back into people's hands instead of the news. So go to ground.news/TBP, scan the QR code, or hit the link in the description. We've got you 40% off of the same plan that we use. So don't keep trusting the people reading scripts for billionaires. Stop being programmed and start seeing the depth of what is actually going on.
Greg, what do you got on this one?
So, Mark, a couple of things. I love the fact you brought that up about hanging out with people who've had near-death experiences. In my opinion, if you've had more than one, I don't want to hang out with you. Something is wrong, and I don't want to be there. But really weird start She does a Prince Andrew. She does in the Navy, but she went up to him and says in heaven.
When you have that experience and you go to the other side of the veil.
You gotta love that when you isolate. Let's talk for a minute about some of the language she uses, because this is very LDS specific language. She's talking about behind the veil, beyond the veil. You might understand it, but it is common language in LDS. And I'm not saying she's a good practicing Mormon, LDS, whatever you want to call them, but she is a sect, a very narrow sect of that. And I think even her and her last husband, Daybell, actually were even more narrow, more cult-like. So they're going to have this language that's very dense. And Chase, to your point, their reality is real more than your reality is real. So it allows them to say, the good Lord forgave me, so everything's okay. That's okay. The state of Arizona is not necessarily going to forgive you, so you will end up in prison. And then she's going to go to in the Navy, from in the Navy to in prison later. So, okay, she's going to constantly shift language and change language so she can frame the conversation. It's showing what she's done her entire life, you can guarantee. That nodding and smiling, that's a way to connect. It's a way to try to get that person in the mirror, realize you've synced with that person, and then you've got them so that you can talk to them, and you've got some kind of rapport. Whatever that rapport is, whether it's good or bad, I guarantee you every person she talks to, she's going to try that very thing, and we'll see it intensify. She's also, I think you're dead on, Chase. I think she'd take any kind of publicity you can give her, because I think she desires it and needs it. And Scott, you may have a reason why she needs it, because this whole thing is an interesting one. Watch her arch her neck and tilt her head back. That's exactly the opposite of defiance. When I expose my neck and I tilt my head back but don't thrust my chin, she's curled in her body. That's making herself look less confrontational. And this looks like something she's done a million times. And then she starts fishing with knowing the judicial system and how it works.
I mean, I shouldn't be surprised knowing what I know about the judicial system and how it works. So
Listen to that space she leaves in there to see if the woman's going to respond back. That's a fishing move by her. Whether it's instinctive or something she's doing intelligently, it's there, whatever it is. And then just as you walk through it, just the other side of the veil, that's in the Navy. She separates herself to explain away behavior. Hey, look, this is something you can't possibly understand. And she's going to get even more dense with it. If you're don't have any exposure to LDS folks and you don't know their prophets and all that kind of stuff, her language will even get to be weirder because it won't make any sense to you, even if you're a practicing Christian. She was taught to have joy in every situation. I guess that's why she's here with it. Well, I'll just leave it with this. What she has done is she's got firsthand knowledge, and she's holier than thou right out of the gate. She is more important, more enlightened, all of those pieces we all said. The body language just fits right into it, Chase, because I agree with you. She doesn't seem to show any stress because she's enlightened. She knows something better than you do. Scott, what do you see?
All right. Well, Mark, going to what you said about the body language of the interviewer and how good she is, let me tell you something, man. They're polar opposites. I mean, of course, Lori's all handcuffed up and all that, but the interviewing woman, holy smokes, her illustrators are just spot on. Everything she does, it's all about keeping her attention. Because I think Lori Vallow is kind of not, I don't know if she's spacey or airhead or whatever, but man, she goes off on all these wild, crazy tangents as we go through this. Now, right out of the gate, she gets into fading facts and she's not very confident when she says guilty. Did you expect that?
Guilty. Did you expect that?
no.
I mean, she gives no reasons whatsoever why she was surprised, with that. And she acts like she was talking about being surprised.
It was a bit of a surprise, actually.
What made you surprised that it went that direction?
I mean, I shouldn't be surprised knowing what I know about the judicial system and how it works. So it still was. Just you were there, so
It was.
from what happened, I was surprised at that outcome.
She doesn't say why, and that's basically what she's asking her. Why would you be surprised at something like that? And we didn't see any noticeable reactions from you or the courtroom.
And we didn't really see any noticeable reaction from you or really anybody else in the courtroom when that verdict was read.
Well, they didn't see any noticeable reactions because she probably doesn't know how to do that. She probably doesn't know how to give the, oh my gosh, she doesn't know how to do the reactions we usually use. Greg and I were talking yesterday because I was like, my wheelhouse is being able to tell you if somebody or I lean on being able to tell you if somebody's being honest with you about something. It's mostly law enforcement stuff. When you get into the psychological perspective of somebody like this, for me, it's a little bit tough. So we talked about going down the road. What if she's a psychopath? That kind of thing. And Greg pointed out that when you're dealing with a personality type like this one, then since they don't know how to act in public or with other people and socially, what they'll do is they'll get themselves in a position where they tell you how to act. Something that's really structured, like the military or the church. And in this case, it's this religion. She's part of a religion, but I think she's just wound this thing up, like you were saying, Greg, so specifically that there's these rules she's trying to stay in. As she goes back and forth and bounce around that box, the box gets bigger, and that's why things start getting weird on the outsides of the concept of that religion. Does that make sense? I haven't said this out loud yet. I've just got the concept for it. But she's not out of control. But I think when things happen for her, it's like a bird or a chicken. You know, when they make those real quick little moves and their heads pop, you're seeing that synapse happen right that second. And that's why they move like that. There's nothing really smooth about those movements. So I think that's why her movements are so tight and jerky and move around like that, because she's not thinking ahead of time about what she's going to say very often. There may be a little bit of time, but not much at all. So I think she's just reacting as those thoughts come into her head, and she's not really structuring or editing or anything else when it comes to those. So her illustrators are at this point are minimal. You know, so her volume goes up and down. We see these bursts of energy, and where she talks fast and slows down and speeds up a little bit. There's one section in here in one of these videos we're going to see where it's just like a fireworks show compared to what we're seeing now. So I think, oh yeah, and then the romancer. Greg and I have a thing in the True Crime Workshop called the romancer, where the person just talks to you and they get all up in your business and they want to connect with you and be friends with you. You know, they try their hardest to get your attention off of everything else but them as they deliver their "here's what happened" story, or here's how things are going, trying to get you to believe what they believe or listen to them. So this is just a big old bunch of behavior that is fascinating when you get a look at it. At the same time, it's if you found yourself in this position, if you started acting that way or knew somebody that did, you know, out of nowhere, it would just be bizarre. So I think I'm under the impression she's been this way for a long time, you know, for a really long time. And she ended up in this situation because people can control that type of person. Does that make sense to you guys? Yeah. What?
This is the thing she's on trial for right now is the thing we covered the video on before, if you remember. She was meditating, had her legs crossed and all that stuff, Scott. So you're illustrating exactly what she did.
Yeah. All right. We good?
Yeah.
You guys good? Yeah. Cool. Well, it's been an interesting 2.5 weeks.
Has it only been that long?
Yeah.
Has it been like
Feels a little longer, I would say.
Gosh, yeah, it went fast.
It went fast. Guilty. Did you expect that?
No.
Not at all.
I mean, obviously I knew that's a possibility. Yeah. So it was a bit of a surprise, actually.
What made you surprised that it went that direction?
I mean, I shouldn't be surprised knowing what I know about the judicial system and how it works. So it still was. Just you were there, so
It was.
from what happened, I was surprised at that outcome.
And we didn't really see any noticeable reaction from you or really anybody else in the courtroom when that verdict was read. When you did hear it, what was your first thought?
So it's not a secret that I had a near-death experience, right? I talked about it at my sentencing. And when you have that experience and you go to the other side of the veil, you understand, you have a life review. You see your whole life, everything that happened to you. And you see what's important and what's unimportant. And you see what matters in life. So what matters in life is how you react to things, how you treat other people, and the love that you give while you're here on earth. And that's it.
So you felt not
That's
reacting was the best call in that moment?
No, I felt like I should have joy in every situation, which is what I was taught to do in heaven. So.
I know with our interview, you referenced a family tragedy, and that was something that we heard in your opening and your closing arguments.
Right, absolutely.
But that phrase bothered a lot of people who know what happened in a totality, right?
Who knows what happened in totality besides me?
Well,
Who was there?
I think everybody who's seen that you've been convicted of now
wrongly
four
convicted.
deaths.
Wrongly convicted, yes.
So if you say that you were wrongly convicted of the deaths of your children,
Yes.
who killed them?
So, from my interview with Colby that I told him what really happened. And so that's just what happened.
Can you put that into your own words here?
I could, but I would probably save that for my next trial. So,
I want to ask you a little bit about the testimony. Obviously, this was your first time. I mean, you're not an attorney.
great.
What was that like cross-examining people for you, getting up there and having to be able to put into words your questions properly? You got a lot of objections and kind of had to revamp there on the spot. What was that like for you?
It's harder than it looks.
Sure.
It's harder than it looks. It's stressful in a way. Like your brain has to be going 100 miles an hour. I've been in jail for over 5 years, almost 6 years, so you don't really have to use your brain very much in jail. So it was like mathlete or something. You're having to think all the time. So it was interesting. It was different than I thought it was going to be. It's difficult.
What was it like facing your brother for the first time in years?
Yeah, that's a good question. It all happened so fast. I'm still really kind of processing. I mean, yesterday was the first day I slept in like 3 weeks or so. So today I slept into a little bit and I knew you guys were coming. I was like, I better get up because, I knew you guys were coming. But it was different than I thought.
Did you think that your interactions with Adam were positive between the two of you in the courtroom?
I didn't really think anything at the time. I was trying to be in just lawyer mode and kind of do my job at the time. It's hard because being your own attorney, right? You're obviously emotional, and women were obviously more emotional than the men who get up and do it. But I tried to mostly be in attorney mode and try to stick to that.
All right, Greg, what do you got?
This is a really good one because we talk a lot of times about single shoulder shrugs. And there's a thing in here that looks almost like a double shoulder shrug because she's alternating shoulders so quickly. It's just a really weird body language of uncertainty. I think that she's just uncertain about how it's going to be perceived because she's going to speak a language that means nothing to this person. And of course, you might be like, do you believe that? Do you believe that? And that's a classic bullshitter move, that if you fish with light bait and they take it, then you go deeper and deeper and deeper. And Scott, I think that illustrates what you said about the box getting bigger. You get in there and you start pontificating and you start creating all this new knowledge, this new wisdom. That sounds a hell of a lot like a cult to me. And it feels like she might be in her own little cult now that she's separated out. But there's more separation than smugness. She eye closes, Chase, to your closed eye talking at one point just before she starts doing the Macarena or whatever she's doing there. And she doesn't answer the question when she's offered an answer. She does a point back to, like I told the other guy.
Who killed them?
So, from my interview with Colby that I told him what really happened. And so that's just what happened.
That's classic for us. When a person avoids the question by saying, I already told somebody that usually means, okay, I'm not going to answer because it will incriminate me in some way. All this laughing and smiling is exactly that bonding piece. Look, she's just been convicted of murder, maybe for the second or third time, don't remember. And she's smiling and happy and got her makeup on just perfectly and all that kind of stuff. This is the organism doing what the organism has always done and it's been successful with, probably since high school or junior high school or somewhere like that. She tells you it's a good question, but she doesn't answer it. Another good leading indicator of bullshit.
What was it like facing your brother for the first time in years?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Then she says, I was in lawyer mode.
I was trying to be in just lawyer mode.
You really want to go watch her in lawyer mode. I almost made the second thing we do this week her in lawyer mode because it's a good reason why you don't want to be your own lawyer. She steps in it really hard. There's one point where she's talking to a person that the guy that has been killed was dating and she didn't know about it. And the shock and all that is just great when she finds out about it in discovery. So it's an opportunity to illustrate why you don't want to be your own lawyer. And especially if you are not in touch with reality, because law is about motions and process and procedure. And I don't think she got that. She wasn't in lawyer mode. She was in something else like idiot mode because she's got Dunning-Kruger so bad that she thinks she can do anything. Maybe that's the whole problem. Maybe that's what we're seeing is she thinks that she can walk her way through everything. She even she tries to soften, make herself less powerful by saying women are more emotional than men.
Being your own attorney, right? You're obviously emotional and women were obviously more emotional than the men who get up and do it.
And then she says, then male attorney, but she really means that she's more emotional than an attorney because an attorney has no vested interest in her outcome except for victory or failure. And then the final one, I'm going to leave this. Scott, you've talked about chimera before. I'm going to talk about, look at her facial
asymmetry in that last frame of that video. So, Scott, what do you got?
All right. I agree with you about that single shoulder shrug thing she's got going on. I've never seen that before. Because when she says,
Now,
Wrongly
four
convicted.
deaths, four
Wrongly
deaths.
convicted. Yeah.
it's like, what is this about? It's just really weird. And she eye blocks during that as well. So
I
that's
saw that in the lady that was in Houston.
the very same thing. The one by the car, you mean?
Yeah, where it was kind of like a little shoulder dance.
Oh, yeah. You're talking about Teresa Balboa.
Balboa, yeah. But the difference here is there were more than just those two on the same word twice. Because she did one over here saying wrongly convicted and one over here saying wrongly convicted. Her chin didn't point toward it, but her head leaned toward it. She had, but that's close. But who knows what that one was doing because there was so much of that going on. It was that looked crazy. Yeah. So I've never actually seen that before. So there's a lot going on up there in this situation. And we see a single shoulder shrug, just for those who aren't familiar with what that suggests, is that it lets you know that person isn't confident with that answer. And so when she's eye blocking at the same time, that suggests to me that she doesn't believe that. Because we eye block when we hear something, or maybe we say something that we don't feel comfortable with, or if we're hearing something, if information is being introduced into a situation like a bad joke at work that's not safe for work, and somebody starts telling, when you might close your eyes, you might eye block, or literally cover your eyes as that joke starts because you know what's coming. So I don't think she's confident with that, and I don't think she believes that she was wrongly convicted. So that's what that'll do it for me. Mark, what do you got?
Greg, we should do that lawyer mode piece.
We will.
For sure.
I'm pulling video clips. I've got a few, but I'm pulling one so we can get good facial expression. From behind, you can see your body going,
Right.
"Oh."
Right. Because she says herself when she is confronted with her poor performance in that mode, she says herself,
It's harder than it looks.
Sure.
It's harder than it looks. It's stressful in a way. Like your brain has to be going 100 miles an hour. I've been in jail for over 5 years, almost 6 years. So you don't really have to use your brain very much in jail.
so my guess is, if we're ever to see her under real stress and pressure, it's got to be in that. And I would love to see that and take a look, and analyze that. So looking forward to that. Listen, I know before, Greg, you were saying she doesn't show defiance in video 1. I think in video 2 she is defiant.
Who knows what happened in totality besides me?
So she's basically gone, look, you haven't been to heaven and back again. You weren't there. So you, with all your awards, have no reason to question me whatsoever. Well, I think Whitney is great because she comes in and goes, yeah, you pretty poor performance as your own lawyer in that case.
I want to ask you a little bit about the testimony. Obviously, this was your first time. I mean, you're not an attorney. What was that like cross-examining people for you, getting up there and having to be able to put into words your questions properly? You got a lot of objections.
Really, there's a really nice battle going on between the two of them. So she faces her with her inability to act in her own defense. And so for me, Vallow now really ramps up this, as you guys call it, this romancer, this flirtation, not sexual flirtation, obviously, but this charismatic flirtation, super buoyant, super happy. It doesn't fit with the context. She's in jail. Yeah. We should expect some level of depression and anger and upset, but there's none. It's like it's the best thing that's ever happened, and it's flirtatious with that. And that really ramps up for me the moment that the interviewer says, you were pretty terrible at being your own lawyer, weren't you? Bang, up it comes. Massive charisma comes out. Well, look, this is going to be no surprise to anybody, but what kind of person, when confronted with their own inabilities, is going to ramp up their style or their charisma, or they're taking you down? What kind of character does that? What kind of personality, might do that? That's possibly who we have here. Chase, what do you got on this one?
Yeah, I agree with you all. One thing that stood out to me is Lori's sitting across from this reporter like she's on a podcast, not like she's serving jail time for murder. So she's calm and she's smiling, making this small talk. And that in itself is red flag number one for me. That people wrongly convicted of killing their kids usually show one of two things: rage or desperation. And we don't see any of that here. She's comfortable, maybe too comfortable here, because she's not reacting to the weight of the crime. She's reacting to the opportunity to shape some narrative here, not the crime. So she says she was wrongly convicted, but she never asks who did it. She's not screaming for any kind of justice. There's no perpetrator out there in the wind who did these things. And she says, only I knew what really happened, and then kind of shrugs it off and says, I'm going to save it for my next trial.
Can you put that into your own words here?
I could, but I would probably save that for my next trial. So
That's not grief. That's just narrative control. That's very plain and simple. But keep in mind that innocent people clarify, guilty people delay. Lori is keeping the truth, or her version of it, locked up because it's a tool. It's not the truth, it's a tool. So she's not out of options. She's apparently just kind of playing them slow. But she jokes about cross-examining people like it's a high school competition.
it was like mathlete or something, you're having to think all the time. So
6 years in prison, 2 dead children, and she's talking about how hard it was to think on her feet in a courtroom. That's just emotional detachment. And that's the dangerous part here. She doesn't seem like a threat. She seems composed. And I just want to leave you with one thing here. The more composed somebody is when they shouldn't be, the louder that should be speaking to you. That should be screaming in your face. Let's have a look at another.
I know with our interview, you referenced a family tragedy, and that was something that we heard in your opening and your closing arguments.
right, absolutely.
But that phrase bothered a lot of people who know what happened in a totality, right?
Who knows what happened in totality besides me?
Well,
Who was there?
I think everybody who's seen that you've been convicted of now
wrongly
four
convicted.
deaths. 4
Wrongly
deaths.
convicted. Yes.
So if you say that you were wrongly convicted of the deaths of your children,
Yes.
who killed them?
So from my interview with Colby that I told him what really happened, and so that's just what happened.
Can you put that into your own words here?
I could, but I would probably save that for my next trial. So
I want to ask you a little bit about the testimony. Obviously, this was your first time. I mean, you're not an attorney.
great.
What was that like cross-examining people for you, getting up there and having to be able to put into words your questions properly? You got a lot of objections and kind of had to revamp there on the spot. What was that like for you?
It's harder than it looks.
Sure.
It's harder than it looks. It's stressful in a way. Like your brain has to be going 100 miles an hour. I've been in jail for over 5 years, almost 6 years, so you don't really have to use your brain very much in jail. So it was like mathlete or something, you're having to think all the time. So it was interesting. It was different than I thought it was going to be. It's difficult.
What was it like facing your brother for the first time in years?
Yeah, that's a good question. It all happened so fast. I'm still really kind of processing. I mean, yesterday was the first day I slept in like 3 weeks or so. So today I slept into a little bit and I knew you guys were coming. I was like, I better get up because, I knew you guys were coming. But it was different than I thought.
Did you think that your interactions with Adam were positive between the two of you in the courtroom?
I didn't really think anything at the time. I was trying to be in just lawyer mode and kind of do my job at the time. It's hard because being your own attorney, right? You're obviously emotional, and women were obviously more emotional than the men who get up and do it. But I tried to mostly be in attorney mode and try to stick to that.
That kind of the personal part of this, I want to touch on a little bit more of that in the testimony. So it seemed from a totality standpoint that some of the testimony that bothered you the most was talking about Charles dating other women, specifically with Nancy Jo Hancock, but you also referenced it in your cross-examination of Detective Duncan. Why did that aspect bother you so much?
I don't think it bothered me that much. I think it surprised me. Because I wasn't aware of any of that until we got the discovery.
You did not know he was dating other women.
No.
But you were having the affair with Chad Daybell. So how does that
You can say affair, but Chad was really just my best friend.
at the time?
Yes.
But then you got married a few months later.
Correct.
So you were just friends, according to you, with Chad before Charles' death.
Correct.
And then only romantic things started after Charles' death.
Correct.
Do you still to this day believe that Charles was a dark spirit, a possessed spirit named Ned?
That's a whole thing that has been way misconstrued.
Can
so-
you clear it up?
Probably not in the 5 minutes we have left.
Chase, what do you got?
She's sitting there calm again. This time we catch something a little different. There's some small cracks starting to show here. There's some moments where the reality that she has buried starts to leak through. And when this reporter, I don't remember her name, but she brings up Charles dating other women.
Some of the testimony that bothered you the most was talking about Charles dating other women.
Lori has this little tight lip compression, and that's a behavioral tell. And lip compression is something we do instinctively as a reaction to stress. And it's our body's way of holding back something like anger or guilt or sadness or even like an opinion. But it's the first sign that Lori's mask isn't airtight, which I think is a good sign here. And when the interviewer calls out Lori's relationship with Chad, I think is his name.
Yep.
And calls it what it was. She says it was an affair. Watch her reaction.
But you were having the affair with Chad Daybell. So how does that?
You can say affair, but Chad was really just my best friend.
She closes her eyes long and hard, way longer than a normal, just a blink reflex. And this prolonged eye closure that you see here is probably an emotional overload. And I think it's the brain trying to block out some stimulus that it doesn't want to process. So it's involuntary, and you can't fake it very cleanly. And it shows part of Lori that's still I think it shows part of her that's still tethered to reality, even underneath all that delusion and all those layers. And notice the one thing here in my notes here is the sequence. First, the lip compressed, then she's downright eye accessing, a known emotional eye movement for retrieving emotional stuff. But then she shuts her eyes for a few beats too long when that lie is called out. Behaviorally, I think maybe that's the most we've seen so far. And it's more than we've seen when she talks about the murder, not when she talks about the trials, but when her personal narrative, the image of herself gets challenged. That's where we see the stress. She doubles down and says we were just friends or best friends.
You can say affair, but Chad was really just my best friend.
But even now, with everything kind of burned to the ground, she can't break that fantasy. So I think the reporter asked her if she still believes Charles was possessed by a dark spirit or something like that.
Yeah.
Named Ned.
Ned.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
She dodges that.
That's a whole thing that has been way misconstrued.
Can
so-
you clear it up?
Probably not in the 5 minutes we have left.
Which would have been a great thing to hear, but she said it was all way misconstrued or something like that. But she doesn't explain because she can't untangle that without admitting she built the whole thing herself. So she's not immune to reality. So she's not so deluded that she's immune, like Charles Manson level immune to reality. She's kind of buried the stuff so deep that she feels it right when you hit a nerve where maybe she can't script her way out of it. In my humble opinion, this is because she can't argue with the part of her brain that knows the truth. And that part's in there. And that's what we're seeing here, these little revelations. Scott, what do you got?
Yeah, I think if I was going to be talking about a dark, personality or demon or whatever, I'd give it a better name than Ned. Ned's a great name for a human.
Good name.
But I'd call him like T. Tequily or, Sir Shopping or something.
You're old
I
school.
remember
You're
that.
old
though.
school.
Yeah, but see, that's what makes it even better. Makes it
Yeah,
even scarier when you say it when it's dark, It's T. Tequily. He's come for me, Anyway, so that's
Ned.
me. You can tell how bored I was. All right, let's talk about that lip compression that Chase was talking about, because that's exactly where I went to. I went through this thing frame by frame. I kept looking for anger. I wanted it to be anger so bad in there. I wanted to even see a little bit of lip pursing in there, but it wasn't. It was just that lip compression in there. And I think and a little bit, what I did see, in my opinion, was, you guys will have to frame by frame it yourself. I'm going to call a little bit of sadness in there, I saw, because I think what this did was it hit her ego, because she didn't expect anybody to be cheating on her. She's like, it's me. I'm all awesome. No. So I think that's what happened. I think it's probably a little bit of sadness with that as well. And you're right, Chase. She's holding stuff back because I'm sure she has a lot to say about that. But I think it was a blow to her ego, and that's what happened. Greg, what do you got?
Yeah, I think what we're seeing is somebody who is successfully hidden for a long time in plain sight. And Chase, that thing where she closes her eyes, I agree with you. I think that is containment of maybe damn near rage. And it's white bread version of, oh, no, you didn't. It's close your eyes, like getting ready for something. It's isolation. It's get away from it long enough you don't respond. And probably what she's done in dealing with other people, because she's probably harsh to deal with when you cross a certain line with her. And whatever that line is, you may or may not know, because it's designed somewhere in her psyche. I think what we're seeing here is a person who's hidden inside those church organizations, where this, whatever female, or I think it's called Relief Society within the LDS Church. She's been a mover and shaker maybe in her own church. To your point, Scott, of making her world bigger. And I think what she did here was she asked a stupid question. I love watching her on this, when she went and actually started saying, "Did you date my husband?" "Yes." "Did you know did he say I was getting divorced?" "Yes." "I didn't know I was getting divorced." "Well, he told me." So there's a whole lot of her getting butt hurt, getting her feelings hurt. To all you guys' point, her ego gets fractured a little bit there. And I love that lip compression is very clear, Chase, when she says other woman. And then she narrows her eyes at her mentioning cross-examining the detective.
You also referenced it in your cross-examination of Detective Duncan.
And even now, after all this, she's showing residual emotion. What's interesting is we all would expect your children are dead, your ex-husband's dead, your husband's ex-wife is dead. You might have some emotion associated with that. There's no emotion associated with I'm in prison. There's no emotion associated with he's dead. There's no emotion associated with the children are dead. But there's damn sure emotion associated with he cheated on her, even though she was doing the same thing to him, apparently. And when she's called out for it,
You can say affair, but Chad was really just my best friend.
she really then does that best friend thing really quickly, snaps out best friend. Chase, you break into it better than I can. But that best friend then suddenly became her husband, not long after this murder. That's kind of convenient. And I want to know more about Detect Leah and why you're dressed the way you are, Scott. Did you come here to deliver a message?
Detective Lee is a scary, dark personality. I don't know. Yeah, I had to
Here's
do Merritt Street for this.
Here's the reality. All the best names of demons have been taken these days. You don't have a lot left. You can only go for a Ned or a Colin, Terry. There's no good. All the Azraels and the Belials and they've all been
C.S.
taken.
Lewis. C.S. Lewis had some good ones like Screw Tape and Wormwood.
Absolutely. Yeah. Though Wormwood had already been, that was already taken. He was plagiarizing a little bit on the Wormwood. Yeah. No, you're only left with your Kevins and your Terrys and your Collins these days. Look, here's what's interesting for me about this one is it's a great moment. Whitney here, the interviewer, she hasn't got a lot of time to do this interview, and so she's really kind of ramped up. And you see, she's got her notes there, and she's got a lot of places she could go. And we're 3 videos in, and she absolutely manages to hit the hot spot on this subject and turn this interview and in a way that reveals to us, just as you said, Chase, just as everybody said, this is the hot spot for this. This is where this person still has some feelings, which is she got cheated on. Her ego got taken down. Her status got depleted on this one. We see that because she reframed.
I don't think it bothered me that much. I think it surprised me because I wasn't aware of any of that until we got the discovery.
So she has to reframe it. And she hasn't done that before. Whitney shows contempt again. Side of the mouth goes up for dark spirit named Ned.
A dark spirit, a possessed spirit named Ned.
So clearly the interviewer displays to Vallow, I am not buying any of what you're selling. on this dark spirit stuff. And I think that's, partly why as well, she then doesn't go down that route, because there's no point. If she's seen clearly this interviewer is not going to buy any element of this story, there's no point in going down that route. Now, if she sensed that that person is going to bite on it somewhat, she'd start reeling it in. But the interviewer's giving her, right or wrong, strong signals of, I'm not buying any of that stuff, which is maybe a good piece, because it means in this interview, Vallow isn't going to be able to string the usual stories that she might string that have most likely worked a great deal for a lot of her life. Great video, that one. Great interviewer.
That kind of the personal part of this, I want to touch on a little bit more of that in the testimony. So it seemed from a totality standpoint that some of the testimony that bothered you the most was talking about Charles dating other women, specifically with Nancy Jo Hancock, but you also referenced it in your cross-examination of Detective Duncan. Why did that aspect bother you so much?
I don't think it bothered me that much. I think it surprised me, because I wasn't aware of any of that until we got the discovery.
You did not know he was dating other women?
No.
But you were having the affair with Chad Daybell, so how does that
You can
work?
say affair, but Chad was really just my best friend.
At the time?
Yes.
But then you got married a few months later.
Correct.
So you were just friends, according to you, with Chad before Charles' death.
Correct.
And then only romantic things started after Charles' death.
Correct.
Do you still to this day believe that Charles was a dark spirit, a possessed spirit named Ned?
That's a whole thing that has been way misconstrued.
Can
so
you clear it up?
Probably not in the 5 minutes we have left.
All right, fellas, I think there's another good one, and we'll see you next time.